Good evening, Chicago. I'm Darrious Hilmon, along with our very special guest co-host Sufyan Sohel, and this is Chicago Newsroom 2.0.
This week, Swati Staley, Claude Robinson, Adrian Ermer joined the roundtable to unpack the latest developments as ICE continues to wreak havoc across Chicagoland. A 2026 city budget facing increasing pushback, and the arrival of a fresh blue wave amidst the ongoing GOP-like behavior of establishment Democrats.
Dr. Dominica McBride joins us to talk about what it means to build systems of community care during this era of turbulence, and how we can move from isolation and exhaustion to collective care and action.
Westside United CEO Aisha Jaco is here to talk about the measurable impact of her organization's partnerships and how health equity isn't just a medical issue, it's a moral and civic imperative.
And Chicago Inspector General Deborah Witzberg returns with an all-new installment of Inside Oversight.
We've put together an incredible hour of hyperlocal news and information that matters to Chicagoans.
And it all starts right now.
This week on the Roundtable, 3 stories, all unfolding at different levels of power. They tell us something about how authority, accountability, and ambition collide in America right now. First, in Chicago, a federal judge recently issued a sweeping injunction limiting the use of force by immigration agents in Operation Midway Blitz, the crackdown that has already drawn national outrage. From a daycare worker detained at a workplace to the judge's blistering assessment that the facility in Broadview doesn't pass constitutional muster. There's questions about civil rights, due process, and basic human decency that remain at the forefront. Second, City Hall remains squarely under the microscope. The Johnson administration commissioned Ernst & Young to perform a deep dive into city finances, paying the firm roughly $3.2 million for a report on how to close the 2026 budget gap. But some aldermen say the full findings aren't being incorporated, and they've called for a special city council hearing to question Ernst & Young directly. With the warnings of a credit rating downgrade over the city's reliance on one-time fixes, the pressure is building. Finally, politics as usual. In New York, Zohran Mamdani has been elected in a landmark progressive upset. In Washington, Nancy Pelosi has announced her retirement after decades in power. Here in Chicago, Chuy Garcia announced his retirement under very controversial circumstances. And back in Washington, 7 establishment Democratic senators voted to capitulate to Senate Republicans and the current president. Joining me now to help unravel is Roundtable regular Swati Staley, partner at Just Act Partners, Claude Robinson, president of Onyx Strategic Partners, and making her first appearance on the Newsroom is Adrian Ermer, associate vice president of external affairs at the Illinois Institute of Technology. Swati, Claude, Adrian, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Here.
We'll start with ICE. ICE in Chicago, we have injunctions, detentions, constitutional breakdowns. Federal judge issued a sweeping injunction. We have a daycare worker arrested, aldermanic staffers and students detained, protesters pepper sprayed. What does this tell us about how far immigration enforcement has pushed past constitutional limits, and why now? Swati, let's start with you.
That's good. Start with the lawyer.
Start with the lawyer, as one side will do. It's exceptionally frustrating, as I continue to say week over week, about the absolute injustices that ICE is perpetrating against Chicagoans every single day. The daycare worker who was arrested, there's no indication that there's anything that would have required any kind of civil detention, let alone the kind of terror ICE has inflicted as a result of her detention in front of children, in front of parents. I will stand on this every week that I believe that ICE's actions continue to demonstrate a disregard for constitutional norms of state law, of federal law, and the sole purpose of their actions is to incite terror among Chicagoans who are just trying to go about their daily business. It's exceptionally scary, and it continues to be exceptionally scary, the level of of just disrespect that that ICE continues to have against citizens. The recent news about ICE taking a photo op a few days ago in front of the Bean, and instead of saying cheese, as one normally does for a photo, shouting out "Little Village." It's just absolutely, the level of disrespect is horrific, and there continues to be additional case law now that's building against ICE's actions, demonstrating their disregard for constitutional law.
Thank you. I even saw a video a couple days ago of a young child, like 1 or 2 year olds, being pepper sprayed, right? And
Yes.
that's been circulating around the gram and on social media. Claude, what are some of the moral implications of these actions, and who's holding federal agencies, federal actors accountable?
So we have to, I think, take a past view
Sure.
and look at what the current president said when he came into office. And folks that are riding on moral lines are kind of expecting something different than what he said to all of us. And he said he's going to federalize, he's going to go into liberal cities, and he's basically going to do whatever he wanted to. And it seems like we who are rolling on morality are kind of thinking that's going to change some of the stated behavior of cruelty and callousness. They don't care about.
Pain is the point.
Yeah, they don't care about what we see as important, and they want to occupy this land. And America is known for going and terrorizing, demonizing, and dehumanizing people, and it's here in Chicago now. So hopefully the judges and what we're trying to do there in this current republic is going to deter some, but I think something else is on the way.
I mean, I just read 200,000 people signed up to become ICE agents since, in the last couple months since they've been recruiting. And but I want to ask you, besides these judges, who's holding these federal agencies accountable when they overreach?
Nobody. The human beings that are being traumatized, harmed, and the witnesses to these crimes are part of that accountability infrastructure. But we have 3 branches of government here. The legislature shut down, and the courts are the things that have to stay open. And I do see this being litigation as leverage fight for the next 3 years, 1 month, and 15 days.
Yeah, I think without litigation, I think there's nothing that's holding ICE and federal agencies back at this point from following the law. Some of the recent the permanent injunction that was laid down now by Judge Ellis about ICE's use of force. It's definitely a step in the right direction. We see that Trump is challenging some of these rulings already. Mm-hmm. The hope is that as litigation continues to proceed, that we're going to see at least some type of implementation of law and order, which is so crazy for me to be saying, right, considering Trump ran on law and order being the platform that he ran.
He's not, short of irony.
Yes.
And with that, I mean, we're counting on a court system and legality as protection, but we have to realize that those are people, lawyers. I sit on the Attorney Registration Discipline Commission, which is the eyes and ears of the Supreme Court, and I see immorality happen all the time. So we have to be clear. Our expectations, are people truly going to go to the level of sacrifice that's needed to change this? Well, I'm questioning.
What gives me hope, though, to your point, is, the Supreme Court recently refused to hear the case that would relitigate marriage for all.
Right.
Right?
Right.
That is like a silver lining, I think, mm-hmm, in these, that we will find. I continue to believe and hope that we will find in this cloud of an administration or should I say, tear gas cloud of an administration.
Before we shift to the next question, I want, real quick, what tools do our leaders on the ground who oppose these tactics have? Are we seeing limits of community groups, our elected officials when it comes to this unchecked power of federal agents on the streets? Adrian?
If this administration, particularly the man who runs it, flouts court orders left and right, I struggle to see our own state folks, our own city folks, leveraging or asserting something that he would abide by.
Yeah.
What I really appreciate about the judge's ruling on the ICE violence is creating infrastructure or imposing infrastructure that can serve in the place or in the absence of humans, right? So they're mandating the body cam wearing. I think one of the guys has to report in to the teacher every week, which is great because that level of like hands-on accountability matched with the technology will be helpful, especially when we have to go back to court years after this administration is done, because that's how backlog and bottlenecks work, right?
Yeah.
And I do think it's absolutely important that the governor and mayor continue to speak out. I think, to your point, they're not necessarily effectuating any type of like accountability because they're not able to, right? But at the end of the day, what I want to see out of our leaders is continued protest, continued pointing out of the illegalities of the actions of ICE. And, there are still concerns that we have about Illinois State Police being deployed as a perimeter setting around Broadview. There are things that I think that the governor and mayor can continue to do, but absolutely continue to speak out. I think it's critical. We have to point out injustices as we see them.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's pivot real quick to the mayor, the budget. We had a $3.2 million Ernst & Young contract. Some aldermen are alleging the report's findings aren't being fully incorporated into city council and they into the budget, and they've called for a hearing. And we also have credit agencies which are warning about a downgrade. Claude, the city paid Ernst & Young $3.2 million to help close this gap, and now aldermen are questioning how much of that advice is actually being used. Is this transparency? Is it trust, or is it both?
I would say both.
Okay, please tell me more.
And the mayor is having a battle with aldermen at the Persons, or alders, and his leadership is going to be needed to help move past the disagreements and get folks to focus on what's best for Chicago. Governance is one thing and the politics are another, but in these times, in the current context, there's an assault on the city. People need to rally around and see how we work together to get this. It's going to be concessions for everybody at a critical point in time in Chicago's history. And my encouragement to both alders and the business community is to really see, are we going to exacerbate and make problems even worse than they are? And I think it's important that the Ernst & Young report is one report, but Jim Reynolds and Karen Freeman Wilson also had a commission, and they provided a lot of ways that they can look at certain spending as well. So we should pay attention to that. And these are business leaders who want to see segments of Chicago that may have been disinvested in, all of us seeing a benefit to closing that gap as much as possible.
Yeah, thank you. So throughout the week, talk about issues in City Hall week after week, and a lot of lack of trust and transparency. How serious is Chicago's fiscal risk, and what's the political calculus heading into the budget season? Yeah,
I think we have to focus on the concern about the credit downgrade, right? It is a serious issue because it does impact long-term solubility around the city's finances and the need for us to take longer-term actions. A lot of the recommendations in the Ernst & Young report are multi-year implementations, and we've talked week over week about the need for us to have trust in our city institutions to be able to make some hard decisions. There's a lot of recommendations in addition to Jim Reynolds and Karen Freeman Wilson. Civic Federation issued a significant review of the budget with a number of possibilities and inefficiencies that are happening in city government, right? The idea around 80% of vendor costs going to 3% of vendors. It's a highly lopsided procurement structure. There's highly decentralized procurement strategies. There are things that the mayor has to show and demonstrate that he's serious about getting some of these expenses out of control. Or getting them in control, rather. The reality is that, we talk about this being a potential revenue issue versus an expense issue. The other side of the balance sheet is absolutely important. The Civic Federation report said that the city owns one vehicle for every 17 full-time equivalent employees. That is way outside of the norm, right? The industry standard is 1 in 65.
Yeah.
So the need for us to better utilize our dollars as we're paying taxes to the city is absolutely important too. And the need for the mayor to demonstrate leadership in managing expenses is I think, a very important step. And the idea around this credit downgrade too, that we have, that the mayor continues to say that it's his predecessors who have continued to implement these one-time fixes. He can't keep saying this when he's absolutely implementing those same types of fixes himself, right? Not that I'm saying that's not a part of the solution, but the reality is that there needs to be leadership behind significant changes that are longer term to put the city on the right financial track.
Thank you. I'm going to shift to our last segment. We have a few minutes left. Chuy to Pelosi. Chuy Garcia stepping down amid ethics scrutiny. His chief of staff is running for his seat. We have Nancy Pelosi announcing retirement. 7 Democrats, including Durbin, voted for continuing resolution that excluded Medicaid, ACA protections. A lot of anger from progressives. But in contrast, we had so many victories last week on Tuesday, including Zoran Ramdani signaling growth and strength in the left flank. Adrian, we're seeing old guards exit stage. We're seeing new insurgent voices speaking their truth, stepping up for courage, taking the mic. But the question remains, is the party shifting its values or just its faces?
Ooh, that is a great question. So Chuy's, the story about Chuy and him stepping down mirrors Nancy Pelosi stepping down in different ways. But it begs me of one major question. Do we really see new faces in open elections anyway? Or is it just the next person in line who's paid their dues, kissed the right amount of rings, and is supported by the largest or 2 of the largest apparatuses that are operating politically, right? So I actually am not opposed to what Chuy did. In fact, given the urgency of his health and his familial family issues that he wanted to deal with, I think it makes sense. And I think he did the right thing. And he ensured that somebody who is vetted, somebody who aligns with the values of the people that are served by the district are going to be coming in place. Now, switch to Nancy Pelosi. I mean, this should have happened 3-4 terms ago, if I'm being honest. Not like the octogenarian or the gerontocracy of our Senate and House is not keeping up with the times nor the demands of the electorate.
Sure.
We see the kinds of extremism and the pull and the draw to this strong orange man. Although he is a geriatric patient who had a stroke, we can agree to that. That messaging, that energy is what the people are looking for. And we need that magnetism, we need that charisma on our side, because if we're gonna go sell to workers that we do care about you, wait. It is the economy, stupid.
Yeah.
If we can't convince working people of this, they're either gonna sit out or they're gonna maybe not participate federally and just look locally, right? The Dems have to do this, and I think Nancy is finally taking a seat. Some of these other players are taking seats and saying, it's time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Claude, Zoran's win was decisive, progressive, upset, and what I saw was that there were so many, even from his own party, who weren't willing to support him and endorse him, and even after the fact that he won, are late to congratulate him and show up for him. How significant is both his victory and the lack of buy-in from the Democratic institution nationally, and could it ripple into both here in Chicago right now as well as the 2026 midterm elections? And I know that's a lot of questions, but I think you can handle it.
Yeah, so an exciting, resounding victory. And like people try to say in politics, the New York sent a mandate to the older establishment. I'm not the older establishment, but I'm not too far away from it, and I can see it myself that it was time for a change, and we saw it in the prior elections that younger generations they're not feeling what was, and the change was needed. So I'm excited. I'm excited about New York, and there'll be some serious challenges that he faces. But I think that the numbers speak for themselves, and the numbers can help to persuade where New York would go, and then Chicago being they call it the second city, but Chicago being another city, the progressive movement seems to be making a clear stance on where they want the country to go.
Yeah.
The last thing I could say about both Mayor Johnson and then Mayor-elect Mondani is that they're not scared and they're not playing the political game like it's been played in the past, which is something that I think needs to happen.
Respectability politics can no longer rule the room anymore. We can't afford it at this point.
Swati, Claude, Adrian, thank you so much for sharing your words and wisdom with all of us tonight. On the other side of the break, Darrious talks about systems of community care with the CEO of Become, Dr. Dominica McBride. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Bianca Cotton, inviting you to tune in for a new episode of Behind the Confident Smile, where we discuss what it's like to have tongue, lip, and cheek ties with Crystal Morgan. Tune in on CAN-TV Cable Channel 19 or stream online at cantv.org or on the CAN-TV Plus app. Elevated conversation and storytelling. Experience the power of community television.
In times of political turmoil and economic uncertainty, telling the stories of our city and neighborhoods is more critical than ever. At CAN-TV, we do just that. But with shrinking budgets and pressure on independent media, the future of hyper-local news is at risk. Your generous financial support ensures that we can keep shining a light on what matters most, right here in the city of Big Shoulders. Visit cantv.org and donate today. The power of community television depends on you. You, me, we are CAN-TV.
At a time when headlines are filled with division, hardship, and uncertainty, the question for many of us isn't just how to survive, it's how to stay connected, grounded, and whole. Across the country, families, neighborhoods, and entire communities are grappling with the ripple effects of economic stress, political polarization, and social fatigue. Yet in that tension, there are also seeds of hope found in spaces where people come together to heal, organize, and build something better. Our guest tonight believes that real transformation starts not in institutions, but in relationships. Dr. Dominica McBride, founder and CEO of Become, has dedicated her life to helping communities build capacity, equity, and connection, what she calls community of care. Her work focuses on fostering empathy, leadership, and resilience from the ground up, helping people see that healing and justice are not competing goals, they are intertwined. Dominica, Dr. McBride, one of my favorite humans. I've told you this on and off the air. It is so good to have you back. I say some weeks we really need you, but that feels like every week now. So welcome back and get ready for the call.
Oh my gosh,
Thank you
it's
for
always
being
so
here.
good to be with
So
you
good.
and your energy and your spirit. I love it.
But you and I talked about this before we started rolling. Without hope, so that the work you do really plants those seeds. It's more important than ever right now because it really might be the last bastion that we have to see our way through this is that hope. and the connectivity that can sprout from it. So you've spoken about community of care. For those unfamiliar with how you're using that terminology, what does that phrase mean in your work, and why is it especially relevant right now when so many of us, myself included, are feeling politically divided, economically strained?
Yeah. So it's really harkening back to that idea of the village, right? Like that so many of us have experienced long ago, where people just looked out for each other, right? They looked out for each other's kids. We bartered with each other.
We had rent parties.
Just like tapping into each other's strengths. So it's really like bringing that back, like really looking out for each other, using our talents to support each other, our resources. If somebody can paint in your neighborhood, like can they paint a room in your house? If somebody is good with children, a nanny, can they watch another, neighbor's kid in an emergency? Like it's really tapping into each other's strengths, each other's skills again.
It seems so profoundly simple, but we've done this. Our communities have done this.
Yes.
Okay, I love what you're telling me. And especially right now, I feel it all the time, burnout and mistrust and social fatigue, it's at an all-time high. It doesn't seem to be, it's at an all-time high.
Yeah.
What is your work revealing to us about the toll that this current environment, this convergence of trauma and stresses, what is it, the true toll, what is the true level of pain and trauma it's causing our communities?
Yeah, so we were already coming off of a huge collective trauma with the pandemic, right? I mean, we're still in some ways dealing with that, right? But we were already coming off on that and starting to recover, starting to like reconnect, and then boom, like now we're hit with like policy cuts, funding cuts, huge layoffs, right? People are scared. Like scared, anxiety is on the rise. There are people that anger, huge, like rage, and people like are not even able to tap into the resources that are there for them, right? Like there's parents that are not taking their kids to school for fear that they might get picked up, right? Like or deported, detained. There are people that are not calling 911 even in an emergency.
My God.
Right? Like they're dealing with these hardships and these continual traumas like on their own.
And trusting nothing and no one.
And trusting nothing and no one, right? So this environment is creating this milieu of distrust, of scarcity, and really it's creating this environment of lies. Like, the thing is that they want us to feel like we can't trust anybody, like we're isolated,
the isolation of
like
it all.
We have nothing, and those are just lies, right? And this is really a time where we need to deepen into what is true and what is real, which is each other, right? Relationship, love, care, right? Like what in our own neighborhoods or who in our own neighborhoods can we begin to reach out to connect with so that we can really tap into the power that is already inherent. It's already inherent in us, it's inherent in each other. And so for us to really begin to come together again, to reknit that social fabric, like that's what's gonna get us through it. It's not only like to survive, right? We need each other to survive, but to thrive.
To soar, yes. So you just hit an interesting point, and it's kind of been a theme. We know what community feels like, and many of us, we were part of that. And then something, maybe it was the last crises or 3 crises ago that got us there. And then once the crisis passes, we kind of fall back into, and there are systems around the caste systems, crabs in the barrel, trust nobody. There are enough external forces that are more than happy to have us be disconnected again. How do we, how does become and how do we take the things that we're watching, thankfully, happen in this crisis, where folks like you're reminding us, we have everything we need, come together in community, build those systems of trust. How do we, once this passes, fingers crossed, how do we sustain those systems that don't need to wait for the next crises, but can impact and uplift and enrich our lives continually from this point on?
Yeah. So a lot of times, like when we have something that's negative, right? We get pushed, like our the part of our brain that's very, very old, right? The amygdala gets activated. It's like you're afraid to fight, flight, flee, you know? And so we get the adrenaline rush and we're like, boom, we're working together. We're trying to like figure, we have a common enemy. We got to get through this. We got to do something. It's like urgent. It's reactive, right? And then when that dissipates, you know, and it's like, it seems like it's back to quote unquote normal, or it's quote unquote peaceful, right? Like there's like, oh, we don't have to work together. Like things
it's like working out. It's like going to the gym. You get to that stabilize, you see the results, and then you go, I'm good. We're good.
Yeah, and then the weight comes back,
My God, today.
you know, a few weeks later. And, like,
and now you're angry and upset and disappointed.
Like, why? Why can't it just stay? Like, because we need to keep working. We need to keep going, right? And so it takes 5 to 6 positives to overcome one negative thought.
Wow.
Right? Because our brain is kind of like wired for the negative to survive, right? So it takes 5 to 6 positive thoughts to overcome one negative thought. So vision, we need something so beautiful and so big and so positive, the vision, right? Something inspiring and loving that will keep us motivated to keep going. We don't have to just acquiesce, or we don't have to be okay with the status quo. Like, this is not the way life is supposed to be. Even before 2025, that's not the way life is supposed to be.
Say it out loud. Like, this ain't right.
This is not right. It's not
it's
right.
Unacceptable,
like,
and it's not right.
Yes. We as human beings have so much more potential. We're so much more powerful than anything we've really seen in our lifetime. And so we really need to tap into a vision that's much bigger, much better than what we've experienced, and work in relationship towards that vision. So if we can create that vision of that like bright spot, that bright North Star together, and keep working towards that, and celebrate the wins along the way, deepen trust and relationship with each other, then I think that's really what's going to get us not only through the crisis, but well beyond the crisis, to actually develop the communities and the systems and the country that we can have and that we deserve.
So let me, I knew we were going to never have enough time, but I'm going to try to get a few more in. Okay. Right now, we're watching it. We're watching it in real time, macro, micro. We need a certain kind of leadership. What kind of leadership? When you talk to organizations, to leaders, to politicians, to civic leaders, community leaders, organizers, what is that combination of, I would suspect, empathy and accountability? What is the leadership needed by those of us right now who have platforms and have a responsibility?
Yeah. So we did research with over 600 women, philanthropists, nonprofit leaders, organizers, and we did a deep dive with 13 change makers. And we wrote a book called Becoming Change Makers that lays out, yes, thank you, that lays out the leadership that's really needed for this time, the liberative leadership that's needed for this time. And what came from that research and from these amazing stories of these change makers who's transformed themselves and their communities is that, one, we need healing leadership. We need leaders that are on their own healing journey and that support the healing journey of their teams and communities. We also need connected leaders. We need leaders that like invest in and support and uplift relationships and authentic, genuine connection between each other. We need culturally conscious leaders that are aware of their story and how their story is important and has affected other people, and that honors other people's stories, their cultural stories, their intersectional stories. And we also need uplifting and liberative leadership that honors the power, the inherent power of people within each person and within each other, and that connection, and that uplifts the inherent freedom that we have. And with all of this together, like being committed to the deep listening and asking critical questions and supporting your team and other people in this, but really uplifting the healing relationships, intersectionality, and power that is present, that we should honor and that we should celebrate.
We are not going to have enough time. I have more questions on this silly paper, but every time we talk, we've had a few conversations, a few film conversations. I always feel better when it's over, but there's always so much more to ask. The work you all are doing, you are leading at Become. I've talked about this. It's not just the things that you talked about, but you understand the measurement, the evaluation, the infrastructure underneath everything you've said. And we'll talk more about that when you come back. So you're coming back, say it.
Yes, I'm coming back.
For now, thank you for this. Our community appreciates it, and we certainly do. Continue great success to you and your incredible team at Become.
Thank you so much.
Dr.
It's so
Dominica
good to be
McBride,
on here with you.
On the other side of the break, a new installment of Inside Oversight with Chicago Inspector General Deborah Witzberg. Stay with us.
I'm Curtis Tarver, inviting you to tune in to the next Brothers Talking, where the brothers and I talk about black male sexuality, myths, shame, and liberation.
Being with my wife, intimacy doesn't equate to sex. Intimacy is being able to open up and say, I'm hurting.
Join the conversation Tuesday at 7 p.m. on CAN-TV, cable channel 19, or stream online at cantv.org or the CAN-TV Plus app. Elevated conversation and storytelling. Experience the power of community television.
CAN-TV is the lens through which Chicago's stories are told, harnessing the unifying power of community television. With CAN-TV On Demand, immerse yourself in the richness of our city through exclusive stories and programs tailored just for you, connecting you to the heartbeats of our streets, the voices of our people, and the spirit that makes Chicago unique. Discover the strength of your community on CAN-TV On Demand.
When people hear the Inspector General is on the case, most think exclusively of the office's investigative work to hold city actors accountable around fraud and corruption. But another core component of the Office of Inspector General involves looking into whether city programs and operations are working as effectively, efficiently, and as equitably as they should be. On this month's installment of Inside Oversight, Chicago Inspector General Deborah Witzberg shares how recommendations from her office's audit work on programs and policies can both chip away at the deficit of legitimacy by shining a light into the inner workings of city government while serving up informed suggestions for bottom-line impact.
Chicago's budget forecast projects a $1.15 billion gap in 2026. That is a very large and literal deficit. City government also operates at a metaphorical deficit of legitimacy. I'm talking about a decades-long arc of corruption in Chicago government that has given no one any reason to trust city government. Hello, I'm Deborah Witzberg, Inspector General for the City of Chicago, and I'm here to talk about delivering on reform in a budget deficit. During budget season and year-round, I want to ensure that the work of my office that touches on the city's budget is readily available and meaningfully accessible to those making decisions about city budgets and to all those who are impacted by those decisions. Through its work, OIG has identified budget-relevant issues that fall into three categories. The first is findings that identify potential revenue, unused funds, or inadequate controls related to expenses. For example, our 2019 audit of the Chicago Department of Transportation looked at the billing process of commercial property owners for driveways that use the public way. We found that CDOT either didn't bill or inaccurately billed an estimated 6,700 permit holders, resulting in an annual revenue loss between $1.1 and $1.5 million. A second category of work with potential budget impact includes projects that assess or identify budget-dependent staffing, technology, or other needs. One concern we frequently encounter in this area is around city departments left to operate for many years without any meaningful analysis of how many employees it should take to successfully perform a function. The number of employees a department has had in the past tells us only that, and nothing at all about workforce needs going forward. These challenges have profound implications for critical issues like assessing 911 response time or compliance with the city's video release policy for use of force incidents. Finally, audited departments may tell us that their ability to take corrective actions in response to recommendations made in an audit is limited by unmet budget needs, which may be unaddressed in past, present, or future budget cycles despite the acknowledged need. Sometimes these kinds of problems can languish for years, awaiting a budgetary solution. For example, in 2013 and again in 2021, OIG audited the Chicago Fire Department to assess its goals for fire and emergency medical services response times in alignment with state and national standards. As of our 2025 second follow-up to the second audit, the Fire Department reported that multiple requests to the Office of Budget and Management for funding for data analysis had been denied. City government needs to make investments in the short run for better services and savings in the long run. But the city's budget process isn't built for that. Budget cycles are annual. A one-time investment lands on one budget year, and savings show up in another year and maybe another election cycle. Our process is not built to accommodate the kind of big-picture, long-term planning that's so critical, especially in the face of a tight budget. As the city faces its budget challenges, we welcome a sharpened focus on the efficient delivery of city services and the responsible allocation of resources. We will continue our work in those avenues and others in pursuit of a government which more closely resembles the one Chicagoans deserve.
Inspector General Witzberg, thank you for amplifying the critical importance of transparency and independent public oversight. On the other side of the break, Sufyan sits down with Westside United's Aisha Jaco. Stay with us.
Cable cord cutting, funding rollbacks, growing efforts to silence community voices. The stakes have never been higher for a community television station. Since 1983, KNTV has proudly served as Chicago's home for truth, access, and accountability. From City Hall to your front door, we make sure your story is told. But to keep it local and to keep it real, we need you. Please visit cantv.org and donate today. The future of Chicago's voice is in your hands.
On Chicago's West Side, life expectancy can differ by as much as 14 years compared to neighborhoods just a few miles away. Behind those numbers are stories. Stories of inequity, of resilience, and of communities determined to close the gap. Westside United was created to do just that, bringing together hospitals, community organizations, businesses, and residents to advance health equity, economic opportunity, and neighborhood vitality across the city's West Side. Leading that effort is Aisha Jaco, CEO of Westside United, a dynamic advocate for community investment, public health, and racial justice. Under her leadership, the organization has focused on creating systems change that does not just treat illness, but transforms the conditions that cause it. From access to healthy food and quality education to economic stability and environmental wellness. Aisha, welcome to the Newsroom.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. I learned a lot, but I want to learn more. You know, there's a 14-year gap between people living in the West Side and the life expectancy of those living downtown. So I am really inspired by you and your organization's work in uplifting this information and the data, as well as trying to minimize that gap. Can you tell me about your organization's mission and what you and your team wake up each day energized to fight for?
Sure. So our big, hairy, audacious goal is rooted in eradicating Chicago's life expectancy gap between the downtown Loop area and 10 West Side communities. It's actually widened, not so much because things got worse, but in terms of how we count communities. So it's related to the difference in census calculations. So it's 20 years. So from the start, we might have been a little bit off in terms of how we thought about the number. So our effort is rooted in anchoring with hospitals in the West Side, including Cook County Health, Rush, Lurie, Sinai, UI Health, who have come together to say collectively, they will think about making the West Side a healthier and wealthier environment for residents by thinking about how they hire inclusively, how they spend dollars. If combined, our healthcare partners would be the #1 employer in the state of Illinois. They have massive spend capability, well over the tune of $4 billion. So the idea was, in thinking about the gap, it's more than just access to care. You've got to think about the economic vitality of residents, families. It's a holistic process and picture. So Westside United aims to band together with hospitals and other partners to hire more residents in the West Side, with the trajectory of having family-sustaining wages as part of that ecosystem. We work to support small businesses, where to date we've not only hired over 7,000 West Side residents, but also redirected over $200 million in spend to West Side businesses. So it's about thinking about low-hanging fruit, having institutions that are historically competitors come together around a joint effort to make the West Side better.
Why don't you think most Chicagoans know about this disparity, and most people know about this disparity that exists? And you talked about some of the ways you're looking to address the disparities, but what are some of the roots of the disparity as well?
I think most Chicagoans that live in the West Side and South Side, for that matter, do know.
Sure.
Because they live it.
Yes.
If we were doing this show live in a bus or in a car, driving from downtown into the West Side, there would be a change in the housing stock, a change in the grocery stores that are available, a change in the school ratings. So even for myself, being born and raised in the West Side, we lived it every day as the norm. Institutions like Westside United show that it's not the norm, and it shouldn't be, and that there are collective efforts in place to help work alongside West Siders too. So in this model, you have hospital partners and community members building these strategies from the ground up. So people are aware. I think having more shared discussion and ownership is what community wants to see from those that can help support and rebuild.
I think shared ownership is really important across the challenges our communities are facing right now. How do you build alignment and make sure the work stays rooted in the communities that you're looking to serve?
So when we started this work, it was born out of Rush University Medical Center's Community Health Needs Assessment in 2016 that really outlined the life expectancy gap across the blue line and green line. And so that set the table for the partners to come together and to decide that they wanted to do something collectively to be responsive. The most important piece following that was talking to the residents, the people that live in the West Side, which is roughly 550,000 people. So we're saying larger than St. Louis, a population larger than Miami, going to have listening sessions to talk to them to see what they thought the problems and the solutions were. So that's baked in our governance. We're 7.5 years old, and we have community members around tables like this with hospital leaders saying where strategies should be born from. A great example is in Garfield Park, where the Garfield Park Right to Wellness Collaborative is the second winner of the Pritzker-Traubert $10 million Chicago Prize. And that is a project born out of the vision of community, a 30-year vision that will now bring a wellness center that includes Erie Family Health, providing primary care. Rush will have a center for well-being. There'll be a cafe, a bank, and this is born out of the visioning of community with the resources of healthcare and multi-sector partners, local philanthropy. So that's what it's going to take, more examples like that.
With those partnerships and then taking in small business investment and workforce development programs, how important are all of these different components, as well as how do you get the buy-in?
Sure. So the buy-in is all about trust building and being transparent and starting from the beginning. When you're looking to build a thing or bring your resources to help someone, they need to tell you what kind of help they need. And that's one thing that I think we got right at the onset. So continuing to do that is important. And then in terms of building the partnerships, once you get trust and it's constant, the building is constant, you can continue to go on a journey around helping to find solutions that community can drive and work alongside philanthropy and other local partners that have a little bit more resources, but not necessarily the vision of what community wants to see. So for us, it's so important to make sure that dialogue is embedded in everything that we do. If we're talking about a maternal child health program, community has to be at the table to make sure we frame that. And so if we want to think about eradicating this gap, and we want to think about the connection to jobs, our research shows that you have to look at median income and increasing that. You've got to address unemployment rates in our target communities. So it is a very layered, complex web that needs to be addressed. But we're finding that with investment, long-term investment, key partnerships, and the voice of community, that it's possible.
It's so possible. What makes you want to do this each and every day and get up each day and keep fighting this fight and doing this work?
I'm born and raised in the West Side,
Yeah.
so I have lived a lot of what I'm looking to solve for.
Sure.
So for me, it's a personal mission for my family. When we think about the life expectancy gap, we're noting that people in the Loop will live closer to 88, and people in Garfield Park, where I grew up, it's closer to 63, 64. So in that, I have a burning desire to make sure in the work that I do every day that West Siders at least live to 100. And so that is just a fuel that burns in me to do this work. The personal passion and experience, I think, is the driving force.
It's really inspiring. Are there moments or community stories that have stuck with you that you keep as motivations each day?
Sure. I often tell the story about, personally, my grandmother who was in church 9 days out of the week. Okay, there are only 7, but she was there 9 days religiously, and she unfortunately passed away from cancer 2 weeks after being diagnosed. When we look at the leading causes of the life expectancy gap from a health condition, it's cancer, cardiometabolic disease, homicide, infant mortality, and opioid overdose. So my grandmother was a statistic in the fact that she did not live beyond the ideal life expectancy, but she was in a place of refuge, a community anchor, where if there had been a community health worker there, maybe she would have lived longer and sought care sooner. So a part of this model is activating community health workers in churches, in other spaces. And it's about leveraging the genius that our healthcare partners bring with what they're known to deliver, also in acknowledging the harm that they've done through structural racism, historical disinvestment, and pairing that with the genius of our communities and the ability to heal and restore.
Sometimes, and I may be wrong in this, I feel health equity is taken as it could be a passing trend. How do we make sure that addressing these inequities stay on top of the political view and the will of all the people who are currently invested in this?
I would say it takes a systems change approach.
Yeah.
You have to embed it in your mission, in your values. So we saw during George Floyd, unfortunately, and the days of Breonna Taylor and the tragedies that followed, there was this trend around racial justice, equity, companies investing. And if we fast forward to what we're seeing today politically, there's a shift, and maybe it notes that that was a trend for some of those corporations. But what I found to be true, that if our systems and partners have mission alignment, that is embedded around addressing structural racism, historical disinvestment, making long-term commitments, because these communities have been disinvested for almost a century. So the reinvestment has to take just as long. So it takes that intentionality from those that have the resources to be in it for the long haul, to share power, and to plan with the people that they want to impact or who are most impacted by these historic disinvestments. And in that, from what I've seen, the people that are willing to be brave, the corporations, the community organizations, and call a thing in terms of why we see disparity, and to help to repair that through resourcing and key partnerships and other measures and methods, they are in it for the long haul. And it is an all hands on deck long-term approach. So it takes that deep commitment.
Thank you. And thank you for your commitment to this work. It was such a pleasure having you here, and thank you for all that you're doing for our communities.
Thank you.
Of course. Darrious is back now with some thoughts on the uncomfortable truths voters must face related to present and future political candidates. Darrious, the floor is yours.
There's an uncomfortable truth taking shape in politics right now. One that's not about party or ideology, but about power, access, and the way they blur the lines between what's right and what's merely possible. In Chicago, we've seen it time and again. Former Alderman Walter Burnett successfully lobbied Mayor Brandon Johnson to appoint his son as his successor. It's a request that might feel familiar, even inevitable, in a city where political legacies often pass down like family heirlooms. But it's also a reminder that for too many in public life, service has become something you inherit, not something you earn. Meanwhile, former Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr., once a rising star, later a cautionary tale, is seeking a return to Congress. Redemption stories can be powerful, but they can also test voters' capacity for forgiveness versus forgetfulness. And at what point do we value experience, and when do we simply reward the ability to survive a scandal? And then there's Chuy Garcia's last-minute decision not to seek re-election, a move that all but guarantees his chief of staff a seat in Congress. It's not illegal, it may not even be unethical, but it raises a bigger question. When voters think they're choosing representation, are they really just ratifying the political order that already chose itself? Even beyond Chicago, the moral contradictions run deep. In New York, establishment Democrats offered little support for Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani, a progressive voice who won on the promise of equity and reform. The silence from party leadership spoke volumes. It was a quiet signal that maintaining power often matters more than broadening the tent. These stories, both local and national, share a common theme. The heroes and villains of politics are no longer so easy to spot. The good guys are sometimes pragmatic to a fault. The bad guys occasionally principled when it suits them. I'm side-eyeing you, Marjorie Taylor Greene. And the rest of us, voters, taxpayers, citizens, are left to navigate the gray space where ambition masquerades as service and loyalty replaces accountability. The uncomfortable truth is this: democracy doesn't erode through coups or conspiracies alone. It fades slowly through the soft compromises of people who really should know better, and through our willingness as voters to let them. So as we head into another election cycle, maybe the question isn't who's running, but who's really running things. And are we as voters willing to start drawing the lines again ourselves?
That's our time for this week. Thank you to all of our guests for joining us in conversation and community.
And a very sincere thanks to you, my brother Sufyan. Thank you for stepping in to co-host this week. And to you, Chicago, for making space for CAN TV and Chicago Newsroom in your busy day. Until we meet again, be well and well informed.